On the phone, we have a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, a gentleman who played college ball at Arkansas. He was a member of the San Diego Chargers and the Dallas Cowboys at the end of his career. An elusive receiver, probably one of the greatest of all time. I'd say the greatest, Lance Alworth. How you doing today, Lance?
Oh, doing great. Having a good time, David. Thank you.
You're smart. You're in the nice weather in California, unlike Chicago here.
Yeah, we're having some nice weather out here right now, thank goodness. It was a little rainy last week, but it's fine now.
I see you grew up in Mississippi. How did you end up going to Arkansas for college?
Well, I was going to Ole Miss and got married, and they told me I had to come on a baseball scholarship rather than a football scholarship, so I decided to go to Arkansas.
Was it hard choosing football over baseball?
Not really. Baseball was an awful lot of fun. I enjoyed playing it. But football was, particularly playing outside receiver, it's a lot of fun. I mean, in baseball they even give you a glove to catch with, so that's a lot of fun. I played center field and enjoyed it.
I mean, it had to be tempting if you had a chance to play for the Yankees.
Well, at that time, I think the Yankees and there were a couple of other teams that were interested in. I almost signed during the summer, but my dad said, no, you need to go get a college education. And he was smart and right, so my hat, again, goes off to him. He was a great father.
So who was faster back in the day, you or your sister?
My sister used to outrun me till I was in the 10th grade.
What was it like playing football at Arkansas back in the 60s, late 50s?
It was a different type of football, I think, than people see these days. The ball, we didn't throw the ball very much. It was just a running game, and a defensive game. And Coach Broyles started, the smaller teams playing with smaller guys, and even up in the front. So everybody we played against we were quick and fast, but not big. So whenever we ran into a big team that was fast, sometimes we had a lot of problems. But other than that, it was great. It was a great time. I think we won a shared 3 Southwest Conference championships in a row. So can't complain. It was a great life.
I talked to Coach Broyles a couple months ago when he raves about you, saying you were one of his best players ever down there at Arkansas.
Who's that, Coach Broyles?
Coach Broyles. He's still going in every day to the office, golfing at Augusta.
Oh, geez. I'll tell you something. He is he's a great guy, a great coach, and, I really enjoy playing for him. It's a shame. I think he's retiring this year, and, he's whatever honors they give him, he deserves more than that.
What was he like as a coach?
I think he was one of the first coaches. He had a big stand that where movies were taken every day, out in the middle of the field.
Okay.
And I think he's the one that started that, and he really coached from up there. So we had a lot of outstanding coaches that that played on the field, but he was just a mastermind of it, and so stayed away from the guys a little bit.
I see you were pre-law at Arkansas. Did you ever think about becoming an attorney?
I went to law school for a couple of years, and I just decided I didn't want to be an attorney after seeing how much time they had to spend in the library.
So Ron Mix didn't try to rub off on you? Because I know he was a very successful attorney there in San Diego.
Who's they say, Ron Mix?
Ron Mix, yes.
Yeah, Ron turned into a great attorney, but Ron had a lot more patience than I did. I was ready to get in and get out, and he was always, right there, and just very studious, very strong, and great teammate, great football player.
How did you end up signing with the Chargers?
I was drafted by the Chargers, and I was their number 2 draft choice, I think, and they traded for me. I was drafted number 1 in San Francisco and never really even talked with him. In fact, I can't say that. I talked with him one time and met him. At that time, he didn't have any agents, and they weren't, they met with me on my way back home to Brookhaven, Mississippi in Jackson, and first thing he asked me, he said, well, what do you want? And I said, well, I talked with the AFL guys, and I said, well, I'd like a no-cut contract. And they said, well, we don't give no-cut contracts. And I said, well, thank you very much. And I walked out of the door and never talked to him again.
When you went to
And
the Chargers,
when I signed that year, I signed with Al Davis is really the reason that I ended up in San Diego. He recruited me, and I loved him. I still love him to this day. He was a great man and a great coach, and I have nothing but positive things to say about him. They gave me I had a $10,000 bonus and $20,000 a year for 2 years. A lot of money, huh?
That was back then. Nowadays, that's like meal money for these guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Did Al Davis move you to receiver?
That's when I came in, that was what they wanted me to play. And it was really funny because when they started the draft, Kansas City had called me and said, "Look, we'd like to draft you. We want you to play defensive back." And I said, I'm going to law school if you draft me to play defensive back because I don't want to play defensive back." So they didn't draft me, and the Chargers did, and so I got a chance to play outside receiver.
Who gave you the nickname Bambi?
Charley Flowers, guy from Ole Miss. I walked into training camp and walked around a little bit and went out and practiced a bit, and came back in, and he said, "Well, you got big brown eyes, you run like a deer, and you got short brown hair. We're gonna call you Bambi." And I just ignored it because I didn't like it, but it sort of stuck. And for the first couple of years they called me Bambi, and then 3 or 4 years they called me Bam this, Bam that. And then my 7th year when I went in, they called me Mr. Alworth. I knew that I was an older player. That's true. That's really true of how it happened too.
What was Sid Gillman like as a coach?
I'm sorry, didn't hear that.
What was Sid Gillman like as a coach?
Sid was a genius. I mean, he was an offensive coach, and I mean all the stuff that you see today, and all the stuff that was run by San Francisco and was run by San Diego, and this was all from Sid Gillman. I mean, he invented the West Coast offense, and they didn't call it that at the time, but he's the guy that was responsible for it.
So it had to be more enjoyable to play in the AFL at that time than the NFL again because it was more wide open. You had great receivers like you, Charlie Hennigan, Charlie Taylor.
It was looking back at it, everybody called it such an open game, but we didn't throw the ball very much. Nobody did in that day and age. So, to look back at it and say, AFL versus NFL, and they threw more than the other. I think if you look back at history, it shows you that the NFL probably threw more than the AFL did in those days. But anyway, it was any consequence of that. I wish I were playing nowadays because they throw almost every down. I love it. That's fabulous.
And they couldn't hold you like they used to.
Well, yeah, they used to be able to hold a little bit more.
What cornerback gave you the hardest time?
Pardon?
What cornerback gave you the hardest time?
Willie Brown from Oakland.
What made him so tough?
He was like 6'2" or 3", and he was quick. He was fast, and they played hands-on, and his quickness was what kept him because he could play head. He could come up and play right in front of me, and we used to be they could hound you from the moment you left the line of scrimmage, and he was just really quick and fast, and I really enjoyed playing against him. He was a great player.
Your quarterback, John Hadel, how important was he to your success?
Well, John had a great arm. John, unfortunately, hasn't gotten into the Hall of Fame, but if anybody deserves to be as a quarterback, he does. You check his stats against people that are in there now, and he's right in the middle of it. And it's really a shame that he hasn't. John had great timing. He was a great athlete, great guy, great leader. I had to tell him all the time I was open, but I think all receivers say that.
You're never covered.
Pardon?
You were never covered, or all receivers feel they're open every play.
Oh, we're always just ask any receiver. He's open.
Well, Tom Flores, did he ever try to get you to the Raiders when he took over there?
Yeah. In fact, he called me one training camp when I was trying to. I was trying to get I was trying to get a raise of $5,000 from $30,000 to $35,000, and Al Davis was during training camp, and Al Davis called me and he said, "Hey, I just traded for you," and he said Sid will be calling to tell you. And I've been going over. I mean, Sid had been giving me all kinds of hectic and problems about a $5,000 raise, and so he said, "Well, what kind of raise you want?" I said, "Just $5,000." He said, "Well, no problem." He said, "I'm trading for you." So I expected to have him come up and call me so that take your playbook. Guy came up and called me. And I went in to see Sid, and Sid looked up at me and he said, "What do you want?" And I said, $35,000. He said, "You got it." And he didn't trade. He didn't take the trade. So
Al probably never forgave him for that.
No, I don't think he would have traded me. Yeah, at that point in time, I was right in the middle of my career, and I was doing pretty well.
What was the championship game like in '63?
It was a game where during the season, the Patriots, we played the Patriots, Boston Patriots at that time, and the Patriots had beaten us, I think, 7-6 or 10-7 or something of that nature. And Sid put together a great game plan. We went in and played, and really sort of almost ran them off the field because of the great game plan that Sid had. And it was all based around our fullback and Keith Lincoln. And Keith had a fabulous game, probably one of the best of all time, I think, as far as back is concerned. But it was, I'd have to say the '63 team was probably the best team I played on the whole time I played in my career.
Do you think you could have beat the '63 Bears who won the championship in the NFL?
We offered to play them. They wouldn't play us.
Hallis was smart.
Yeah, I do think we could have beat them, yes. We had one of the best football teams I've ever been on. It was the best football team I've ever been on.
When you went to the Cowboys, what was that like?
It's pretty different. When I got there, Coach told me, he called me and said, "Look, I traded for you to block. If you'll block, we'll run the Super Bowl." He wanted an outside receiver to come in and block. And I said I would. And I did, and we won the Super Bowl. And we didn't, it was a big change for me because it was not, it looked like on paper that the Cowboys threw the ball a lot, but they threw the backs and tight ends. They very seldom went to outside receivers. So it was a difficult adjustment for me mentally, and trying to get ready to play the game. That was the reason why I retired after 2 years. I couldn't get myself to go work out and during the off season because there wasn't anything to work for. I was going to do this block, and that was something I enjoyed doing it because it was part of the game, but it wasn't the real reason for playing.
How does Coach Landry take one of the top receivers in history and make him a blocker? I never understood that.
Well, you know what? I don't know, and I'll tell you what. If one of the things was, we had Hayes playing on the other side, and I went back one time and told him, I said, "Look, all I have to do is look like I'm going to run a turn in and run straight down the field. We got a touchdown." And he looked at me and he said, "When I go deep, I'm going to 9-1. And I looked at him and never spoke to him again about being open.
Do you think Roger Staubach would have realized it being such a great quarterback there?
Well, Roger was a great quarterback, but Roger was a lot like, what's the kid going to the Browns?
Oh, Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Football.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was that type of football player. So, but he was a great one, So I can't say anything but good things about him.
I'll tell you what, you are two of the smartest football players of all time. I saw an article that said, out of the retired athletes, the one with the most net wealth is Roger Staubach.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure he is. He's done well.
And you've done pretty well with your companies through the years, too.
Yeah, I've done okay. Yeah. I wouldn't trade with anybody. Put it like that.
When you retired and you went in the Hall of Fame, how did you decide to have Al Davis present you?
I wouldn't have had anybody else. Al was a special guy in my life, and he was the real reason that I went to the AFL, and he was the one guy in pro football that I respected more than anything. And I still, to this day, hold that respect and awe for him, and appreciate all that he did for not only me, but for everybody that played for him. He was just a super guy, and meant a lot to me in my life.
I'll tell you one thing. Once a Raider, always a Raider with Al Davis. I was at the Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago, and his players still love him, and no one has presented more Hall of Fame athletes than Al Davis.
I didn't realize that. That's great.
I mean, he's loyal.
Too.
He's loyal. Art Shell says how loyal he is. John Madden. Another guy who should be in the Hall of Fame, Tom Flory, said the same thing. And Jim Otto.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you found out you're going in the Hall?
Pardon?
How did you feel when you found out you're going in the Hall of Fame?
It's really funny because I got a call, and it was 5 years after I played, and I was out trying to make a living and doing things. They called to tell me I was voted into the Hall of Fame. I thought they were just calling to tell me that, I was on the list or something. And they called and told me, and I hung up the phone and, told my wife at the time, and I just said, you didn't need, I was like, I couldn't understand because it didn't have that much emotion attached to it. And I said, well, let me call my dad and tell him. So I called my mom and dad, and when I realized at that moment what it meant, because I couldn't get it out to tell them. I mean, it meant so much to me that, all of a sudden I realized that all my life I'd spent trying to prove to my dad that I was that good.
What did your dad tell you?
My dad always told me no matter how good you are, there's always somebody better. And don't forget it.
He probably said, look at Don Hudson. Look at what kind of receiver he was.
Pardon?
Don Hudson, he probably said, look at him. How great of a receiver he was.
Great receiver.
Is there someone you patterned yourself after?
Not really. There wasn't, when I played, it was sort of a new position, and there wasn't really anybody that, you looked at ran patterns or watched that closely because it just wasn't that much of it at the time. It's not like it is today.
But you had a record that still holds. I mean, Calvin Johnson tied it with most 200-yard receiving games in a row.
Well, you know what? That's a long time ago, so I should have been real proud of that record, I guess.
No.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like you said, they throw so much today. Back in your day, they didn't throw probably a quarter of what they throw nowadays.
No, they don't throw that much. But when we threw it, we did it pretty well. So we had great patterns, we had great coaches, we had some great guys defending the quarterback, and the system made it work.
We got to get John Hadel in the Hall of Fame though next year as a senior guy.
Well, we've been trying and really haven't. And nobody seems to back us up that much, and it's really a shame when you look at all the stats. So.
No, him, Charley Hennigan. I mean, these AFL guys.
Charley Hennigan's one too that should be in there. Yeah.
They forget these AFL guys, and they're going to make it harder next year because there's only going to be one senior, 2 contributors and 1 senior.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a shame. And the thing about it is now we're getting where we put too many people in.
It's the guys who come in. You got to be in the media, ESPN guys. It seems like, or CBS guys.
I didn't say that.
No, I did.
But there are a lot of those guys that deserve it too. So it's not like it's not. But it really is that way. And there's just too many. To me, there's just an awful lot of people getting in.